Well, I'm very pleased to say now I'm joined by Mark Moisley, who is the relatively new commercial director at the GBGB. I think you've been there about a month, Mark. So thank you very much for talking to us. First of all,
Pleasure.
I guess, how's it going is the first question.
Very good, very busy. Yeah, it's just over a month now. It feels longer already. It's been great to get out and about and get to a lot of the tracks, meet a lot of the people involved in the sport, from promoters, owners, trainers, just trying to get a good background on people's thoughts, try and get some of my ideas across to people, and hopefully they can take them on board, particularly with the promoters, because it's keen, obviously, from my perspective, which is all about trying to drive more revenue into the sport, that they're on board with those ideas. So that's been a key thing for me in the early days.
For those who don't know your background, I know that it's extensive when it comes to sport. Fill us in on what you've been doing in your career so far and how that may be relevant to your current position.
Sure, yeah, well, I've been fortunate. I've been in sport now for about 20 years. Very, very passionate, love my sport, always have done. And I worked at a couple of football clubs, so Sunderland, and I was chief exec at Oldham Athletic, which is a tough gig. Lower league football's hard. I know every sport thinks they've got the problems, but certainly lower league football is a tough one because of the lack of money around the sport. So I think that's possibly good grounding, good experience. Hopefully what I can bring is some of the knowledge that I've gained over the last 20 years. It's primarily been commercial roles that I've had. I've also worked at a governing body previously, which hopefully helped as well. So yeah, bringing all that together, that was the reason for being successful, I think, in getting the role. And one thing I think that's very important for me in the role is to make sure that my focus stays very much on the remit of trying to drive revenue through the different ways that we've got to look at through the sport. You know, there's obviously an awful lot of things going on, and I get contacted already from various people about many different aspects of the sport. But I've got to be quite clear in sort of my role and make sure that we continue to be focused on the reason that this role has been created and not get dragged into other areas, because I'll obviously be measured on its success or otherwise of what I can achieve.
What was your knowledge and experience of Greyhound racing before you took this role?
Yeah, not massive. I mean, I've not been taken on because I can list the last 10 Derby winners by any stretch of the imagination. Hopefully I've been brought on because of the commercial knowledge that I've got. But look, I love all my sports, and certainly I won't say I've followed greyhound racing as an aficionado by any means, but I've been to greyhound meetings. My first one was way back at Craven Park in Hull, which is no longer there, obviously. Doncaster's, I live in York, so Doncaster is relatively local for me. And I'd also been down to places like Wimbledon. So I've been around, I've been to a few tracks, and obviously I'm increasing that much more as the time goes on. Now I've got the role.
Well, now you're really familiarising yourself with the sport, and I know it's only been a short period of time you've been in the position, but what have you made of the industry? What have your initial impressions been?
The overriding one for me is the absolute passion for the industry from people. You know, you can look at the negatives that people talk about, and of course there are difficulties facing the sport. There's difficulties facing every sport at the moment, particularly because of the COVID situation. But the passion that comes through from the people that I've spoken to, and you know, I've spoken to a good cross section of people across all levels of the sport, and that's the one thing that really stands out for me is that passion for it. And if we can really harness that and pull people together and get people working together, we've seen it successfully a couple of times on things like the welfare initiatives that have been brought in, where everybody's worked very hard across the sport to bring those in. But also the fact that, you know, we were the first sport to be back live after the shutdown, and I think that was great testament to everybody involved. So we've shown we can do it when everybody pulls together, and I think we just need to try and work harder on that and do more of that. We've got some great things within this sport, and we've got to try and push that forward.
When you first took on this role, you were quoted as saying that you thought it was a thriving sport, and I think you got a bit of backlash for that. Is it something that you stand by, or do you regret saying that?
Look, like I just said, I think there's an awful lot of positives in the sport, and yes, people talk about some of the negatives, but you can talk about negatives in any walk of life at the moment. Never mind greyhound racing, never mind sport in general. What we've got to look at very much is the positive things within the sport, and there are a huge amount of positives in the sport. And like I say, the biggest single one for me is that real passion that people have. And yes, people, you know, particularly on social media, we see a lot of people talking about different aspects, and you can take that in a negative fashion. But actually, the reason that people are talking about those things is because they want the sport to improve, and they've got a real feeling for the sport. And there's very, very few people that are actually doing things because they want to be negative. They don't. They want sport to improve. And if we look at things in the right way, and we work together and we communicate better. I think that's something that I think is a fair comment that's been criticised from us in the past. If we're better at that, and like I say, we can collaborate more and get people working together. Again, my remit is very much on the revenue side of it. I'm not here to solve all the ills by any stretch of the imagination, but if we can certainly drive more revenue in, that can be a benefit to everybody.
You can see why people might not agree with you. It's a thriving sport, though, when you've got tracks closing, prize money in some areas particularly is very poor, open race money is going down. You can see why people might have disagreed that it's a thriving sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. Of course I can. But I've got to try and work with, like I say, with the positives in the sport. We're trying to bring some new sponsors on board. We're trying to bring more of the bookmakers on board that aren't paying into the levy at the moment. We're trying to work more with the bookmakers that are on board. So we've got an awful lot that we want to do, and we're currently working with our PR agency to put a video and a presentation deck together, because there's an awful lot of good things we can say about the sport, and maybe we just don't do that often enough.
Very true. You've been pretty brave and you've gone on social media, Twitter in particular, and you're in a difficult position when it comes to defending yourself, actually. And social media can be a difficult medium to make yourself clear as well. Do you feel like there's a lot of anger directed towards the GBGB, and do you think that's fair?
Well, I think primarily most of the comments that are out there on Twitter are people that just want to see the sport improve. It's as simple as that. All right, yeah, you get one or two of the keyboard warriors, and in all honesty, I'll just ignore those, because you know that I'm not going to waste my time on those sort of people. But I've engaged with people that are really wanting to see improvements in the sport and wanting it to be better. And I've also had conversations with them. It's not just been on Twitter, and I'm more than happy to do that, because this comes back to improving our communication. And if we can do that and people can see what we're working towards, and we're more transparent with what we're working towards, and I do believe that can only be a benefit for the sport.